Hi, my name is Catherine Crace. I'm a lawyer, social worker, and expert on the reporting of suspected child abuse and neglect. I'm here today to help you answer the question, do I have to report parental drug use to Child Protective Services? When a mandated reporter learns that a parent is using drugs, especially illegal or illicit drugs, they're likely to be concerned about the well-being of the children under the care of that parent. As a result, they'll probably ask themselves, do I have to report parental drug use to Child Protective Services, otherwise known as CPS? This is a good question to ask, but the answer is not always clear. It's important to understand that in most cases, just because a parent uses drugs, whether illegal or legal, it doesn't necessarily mean that a report to CPS is required. That's because parental drug use doesn't always meet a definition of child abuse or neglect. Parental use of illegal drugs like cocaine or heroin might be criminal, but it doesn't necessarily meet the definition of child abuse or neglect. Also, parental use of legal drugs like alcohol and prescription painkillers isn't criminal, but might contribute to meeting the definition of child abuse or neglect. What's important for us to consider is not just the use of drugs, substances, or alcohol, but the impact that use has on the person's ability to parent their children. When parental drug use of any substance negatively impacts their ability to meet their children's basic needs or results in other forms of child maltreatment as defined under state law, then a mandated reporter would be required by law to make a report to CPS. However, the reporter's not technically reporting the drug use to CPS. They're reporting suspicions of maltreatment. Research consistently shows that parents with substance use disorders are more likely to abuse or neglect their children. Substance use disorders impact the choices parents make about their own care and the care of those around them. However, not all parents with substance use disorders will abuse or neglect their kids. Substance use disorder is a term that covers a range of issues related to the use and/or misuse of many substances. Substance use disorder is an appropriate diagnosis when the recurrent use of substances causes clinically significant impairment, including health problems, disability, and the failure to meet major responsibilities at work, school, or home. As we consider our responses to parental substance use disorders, we need to be careful about the impact of our assumptions. Many professionals are on notice to look out for parent use of illegal drugs like heroin or methamphetamines. Marijuana use is more socially acceptable than it was in the past, as states adopt policies allowing for its medicinal and recreational use by adults. However, the reality is pot use is a major driver of reports to CPS across the country, much more so than heroin or meth. We judge parents quickly when we hear they use certain drugs. We assume they must be bad parents. However, alcohol is 3 times more likely to be the substance related to substance use disorders in parents. Additionally, we're also more likely to offer negative judgment for mothers with substance abuse disorders, but it's fathers who are most likely to be diagnosed with substance use disorders. So we need to be careful about our assumptions. In many states, if an expectant mother or pregnant mother uses certain illegal drugs, their medical provider is required by law to make a report to Child Protective Services or another government official, like the health department. However, not all mandated reporters are required to report prenatal exposure to drugs in all states. If you're unsure of your responsibilities to report prenatal substance use exposure, clarify your responsibility by familiarizing yourself with the law in your particular state. When we learn about parental drug use, and especially prenatal exposure, we're rightfully concerned that the drug use might harm the child. Prenatal exposure of certain substances can lead to risk of miscarriage, low birth weight, preterm birth, and significant health complications and birth defects. However, we have to be careful about our assumptions again. I bet most of you, when you heard me talk about all these risk factors for prenatal substance use exposure, assumed that the most dangerous substance for a mother to use during pregnancy is an opioid like fentanyl or heroin. That's because we hear about these drugs all the time in the news and in social media. However, long-term research confirms that tobacco, cigarette smoking, and alcohol use during pregnancy are most likely to cause birth defects and long-term health consequences for children. Alcohol and tobacco use are also the substances most likely to be used by pregnant women, since they're easy to get because they're legally attainable. When considering how we respond to prenatal drug exposure and parental substance use disorders in general, decades of reporting to CPS might have been more harmful than helpful. For instance, many mothers, especially those in need of most support and compassionate intervention, instead fear judgment and reporting to CPS. As a result, they avoid prenatal medical care and other interventions for themselves or their children. They also don't seek help from other services when they know they need it most. Missing prenatal care can result in babies who die have a higher re-record. Missing prenatal care can result in babies at higher risk of death before the age of 1 and mothers at higher risk of birth complications and death as well. And these conditions disproportionately impact women of color and poor women, and specifically Black women. Traditionally, CPS interventions have resulted in removing children from their parents' care when they were concerned about parental substance use disorders. But research has shown that family separations cause avoidable trauma and can actually make it harder for parents to address the mental health issues likely to be underlying their substance use disorders. Decades of research continue to show that efforts that help parents overcome substance use disorders are most successful when coupled with plans to keep their families connected, if not together. Family-based and family-centered treatment programs are important to these vital efforts. When a mandated reporter considers making a report to CPS when they encounter parental drug use, it's generally because you are genuinely concerned. Unfortunately, a rush to make a report to CPS when a report isn't required might cause a lot more harm than benefit. Before making a report to CPS for parental drug use, consider whether you're actually concerned about harm or risk of harm to the child, and avoid making a report to CPS just because you're judging a parent for a choice you wouldn't have made for yourself. No matter what decision you make about making a report to CPS, please support policies that focus on helping families struggle with addiction to stay together whenever possible. For more information, check out our website, www.makingthetoughcall.info.